And when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Jameson Williams has been so impressive these last couple of weeks.
Hello, what's up? And welcome to a of the Cover One NFL Draft Weekly Show. I'm your host, Rich Haynes, Burn River Sports on the Twitter. We also got our resident draft expert, Russell Brown at Russ NFL Draft on Twitter. So, hey, we're here with you tonight. Maybe a little shorter episode than usual, but we're going to do some Q&A. But before we get into that, Russ, man, week going? How'd your Thursday go? What's shaking in your world up there? You said it was windy up there in Detroit.
Yeah, it's blowing left and right up here. It's like 50, 60 mile per hour winds. But I'm doing well. Thursday is always a good day because, this is like the Friday Eve, as we call it. And there's nothing better than a Friday going into the weekend. So super excited to talk some NFL drafts. Super excited to check in with the chat, which was bumping last night for Anthony and I on Sky's coverage. So you guys can check that episode out. We go deep into the running backs. But other than that, man, I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk, some draft. We got the questions coming in. Draft guide will be done within the next week. And it'll be released, and I will have a lot more free time, and I'll be ready to have a cocktail when that day comes, and it will be a vodka soda for sure.
Well, obviously we'll have to do that on air, possibly next week on the show. Tonight for me, a little, it's nothing crazy. I just did a little rum and coke in a glass my daughter bought me. She makes me drink out of it literally every drink because she bought it for me. So I got Brutus on the cup tonight from the Ohio State University. So doing just go back to college, man. Just a little rum and diet. Going back to college. Since my wife is in Florida, down on she's down there for a bachelorette party right now. She's getting back at me for a couple of weeks ago when I was there. So in her honor, I'll do a little rum and diet like I'm on the beach with her down there.
How about this comment? For fuck's sake, you guys and your shiny new toys. Oh man,
who's we're talking? Who kind of toys? Who's John talking about? Hills?
I'm assuming. No, I'm assuming your cup. I got my Yeti. Maybe we look fancy Buckeyes tonight. Maybe we look fancy.
Yeah, I don't know. John, clarify. I want to know what kind of shiny toys. I mean,
yeah, we did get this comment. Oh, he said Bryce Hall. We did get this from Chewy. I don't agree with it at all.
It's all good.
That's
all good. Nothing wrong with that, Chewy.
Nope, don't like that.
I mean, you got us last year, first time in a long time. The Wolverines took down the Buckeyes. Not that I liked it, but it was kind of nice to, I don't know, like feel like what a loss was like, right? I'm really excited now about the game coming up this year because of that. So that was pretty, you guys, obviously Hutchinson, we've talked about him a ton on the edge, out of Michigan being one overall pick. So definitely a very talented team up there in Ann Arbor, but so kind of open question and answer that. I have a couple questions kind of queued up on my own that I'm just curious on your opinion, obviously in the chat. So if you have questions tonight, please put them in the chat. We're just going to be hanging out, having a couple cocktails, and answer maybe some questions outside of the first round too. I know we've talked quite a bit about the first round of this. We're going to start to kind of delve a little bit more into round 2 and 3. As Russ mentioned, he's getting draft guide complete, and then hopefully we'll have some additional mock drafts to go through that go a little bit deeper. But I know the first question, I know you did running backs with Anthony this week already. But we talked a ton about running backs on this show, maybe with this particular audience. Bills Mafia is very excited potentially about the prospect of Bryce Hall. Maybe in the second round. I think Greg actually did a mock draft where he somehow got Chris Olave and Bryce Hall, which I don't know if that's possible, but if that was, oh my God, maybe Aaron did it actually. Could have been Aaron. But you know what? From a running back standpoint, do you think any of them go in round one? And if not, who would be the first running back off the board? And maybe to who? We can maybe look at the round two kind of draft. Maybe talk about running backs a little bit, since you already went into that a little bit in depth with Anthony this week.
Yeah, well, I mean, before I get started, I will say we're seeing a lot of the questions from you guys on this NFL draft Q&A segment. We will definitely get to those. So, bear with us. We're just kind of letting the people filter in and all that stuff. But no, yeah, I mean, for me, the top running back is Kenneth Walker. I just think the fluidity within his lower body, the way he can move laterally. I mean, you see this running back that goes from and I did this last night on the show. He's like straight like an arrow, and then he just is able to get laterally or horizontally like this with his lower body, and it's so impressive. And then you have the contact balance, and then you see a guy that didn't get utilized a ton as a pass catcher, only had 18 passes, 18 catches, and he shows that he can run routes, whether it's an angle route, whether it's a swing pattern. There's so much to his game that I would love. And yeah, you're right, Ron. He did go to Michigan State, but I'm not biased to that. It's not because I watched every single one of his games, not once, but twice. It's the simple fact that I think he is somebody that when you have an offense like, let's say, for example, the Buffalo Bills that need that true running back one, you're in a very good spot with your roster. Your team can get better. We're not talking about taking them in the top 10 to a bad football team. We're talking about a team in the back end of the first round that already has some ready-made guys. And I think Kenneth Walker is a ready-made guy for the NFL. There is no putting him in and letting him sit and wait. No, I think you get him in there, and as a rookie, you could see Kareem Hunt type of potential. And I really do believe that. And I think he's a top 35 player in this class, a top 30 player in this class, to be completely honest, off my board. And I really do believe he will be somewhere in that top 40 of the draft. And as far as Breece Hall, I don't understand all of the love for him. I get why some might like him because of the long speed, the burst at the second level. But with him overall, I see a guy with some really tight hips at times. I see a guy that cuts into the garbage. I don't see the same type of elusiveness within his lower body that I see from Kenneth Walker. But most importantly, I don't see the contact balance. And I think in the NFL, you're going to get loaded boxes at time. You're going to get a linebacker that's down there tripping you up, a defensive tackle, whatever, and Breece Hall falls over. It seems like 9 times out of 10. So I do question some of that. But if I had to pick it, it would be Kenneth Walker for me. And that's not me playing bias to the plaques on the wall. No, that's just me being honest.
And with Breece, what's interesting to me a little bit, he's really tall for running back. I think 6'1", 6'1.5",
Yeah.
maybe. So when you were breaking him, did you see any sort of maybe running style where he was too upright? Because we always hear that about tall running backs, right? George, I feel like George was able to do that well in the NFL, kind of going back a little bit, as far as running upright, being a tall running. Any concerns that on the tape with Breece, or is it just more so he's the same, maybe not the same field vision? If I'm breaking down your comment a little bit there, compared to Kenneth Walker.
I think more so just with him is I don't even think it's so much a height thing. I think the decision making is just bad. I really think it's just not where it needs to be. And at least I wouldn't say bad. That's maybe the bad way of putting it. I would say it's just not consistent enough. Like there are so many times where he has an opening, to his right or to his left, and he cuts in the opposite direction where there's all of this garbage, all of these defenders. And it's like, I don't see that from an NFL running back all the time. And I don't see that all the time from a player like Kenneth Walker, if we're going to compare the class. And with Walker, he understands how to bring down his center of gravity a lot more consistently. Again, you see him hit these lateral cuts at times, and he takes games over. I mean, like, look at the Michigan game, 5 touchdowns. I mean, it's ridiculous what he was able to do in that game. He's able to take football games over. And I think when you think of, the longevity of a quarterback like a Josh Allen, the longevity of other quarterbacks in this draft, if you're trying to get that longevity out of that position or get your offense going in the right direction to put points up on the board, I think both running backs can help you, but I certainly believe that the running back that can help you the best from day one is Walker.
All right. So, another question in the chat. I mean, I guess, let's maybe stick with running back just for one more second. Is there, we talked about Walker, we talked about Hall. I do want to get to Pop Mafia's question, but I suppose maybe we shouldn't transition quite yet. Is there any other running back that you see that maybe we haven't talked about, or maybe nobody you feel is looking at that could be a round 2 guy, end of round 2, maybe early round 3 type player that can make an impact? Obviously a lot of Bills Mafia usually in our chat, they're sitting there at 57. I'm sure they hope they get a corner in. I think we kind of covered that last week quite a bit. They're very excited about Anthony, who won, by the way. He won our mock draft last week because he took the homer pick for the Bills, at 25 with Trent McDuffie, and the crowd went wild in the chat, which, again, I think if he went to the Bills at 25, that'd be an excellent choice. But maybe, any other running backs that we haven't talked about that could be an end of round 2, top of round 3 type guy that could be impactful in year 1.
Well, I mean, I do like quite a few of these guys. I mean, I really do think it's a really good class overall. Like Tyler Goodson out of Iowa, for example, I compared him to Raheem Mostert. He might go undrafted, but I could see him fitting a zone scheme really well. He's got some long speed there. There's just some overall concerns with maybe his just overall body type, maybe some of his contact balance concerns. But like when you think contact balance, I don't know if he'll necessarily go late 2 or early 3. Maybe he's more of that middle 3rd round, but that's Dameon Pierce out of Florida. I know the chat was really bumping last night about him, and I figured, why not talk about him? We talked about Brian Robinson. We talked about quite a few different guys last night, but we didn't get into detail about Dameon Pierce. And he's an interesting study, through 4 games that I graded him on, from 2 from 2020 and 2 from 2021. I mean, he's a strong downhill runner. He's not afraid of contact by any means. I mean, he runs hard. He looks for contact. He's physical. He doesn't dance when he runs, and I like that with guys. I don't like guys that kind of sit there and try to be too shifty or overthink their run. They take what they're given, and they just go north and south. That's my type of running style. That's my type of back. Maybe that's old school in me, but that's the way I do things. But beyond that, like, he can catch passes out of the backfield too. He has 36 receptions over the last 2 seasons. So maybe he wasn't asked to do it a ton, but he can catch passes. But also, from a touchdown perspective, you think down in the red zone, you think like LeGarrette Blount. You think of this past year, Damian Harris getting all those 2-yard touchdown runs. This is the same kind of deal here. He had 13 rushing touchdowns in 2021, which was the most at Florida since Tim Tebow in 2019. So we're talking over a 12-year span where this guy comes in and he plays really well. Again, the long speed will be something that will get put to the test. His 100-meter dash time in high school, his best time, his PR was 11.91 seconds. He's, again, not going to be a world beater as far as that player that's going to be the most complete back. But I think when you look at a back that between the tackles, short yardage, and in the red zone, he could be very productive. And I think that holds value to teams in the NFL at least for certain teams with certain schemes and things like that. And maybe you look at a team like Atlanta, maybe they pick him early in the 3rd because they don't know if he'll be there in the early 4th. Who knows if, they want to keep moving forward like Mike Davis. Arthur Smith might want to bring in, I don't want to say a Derrick Henry type back, but a little bit more of that physical runner. I don't know if Tom Brady and Tampa is going to necessarily go that route with LeGarrette Blount, with Leonard Fournette. I don't think that's going to be the case with New England as far as their running backs. But again, there's teams out there that will have value to a player like Dameon Pierce. And I took a really long answer on this, but I think he needs to get a little bit more love. I want to give him props. And I know the chat was really bumping about him last night. So I like him a lot.
I think you're mentioned from Chewy Baca. Is one of these running backs a better fit for that offensive scheme that maybe they run in Buffalo? From a 2 tight end set perspective.
Well, I mean, I know.
Excuse me.
I know Eric.
I believe in New York.
Yeah, well, I know. Eric Turner really likes Breece Hall and the fits there and everything that he provides. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna kind of throw maybe a dart on the board here and just kind of go off the wall and a little bit different from some of the top backs that we're talking about, Kenneth Walker, Spiller, stuff like that. I'm going to go with Rachaad White out of Arizona State. I talked about him a little bit last night as well, but he's a really smooth operator. I think he runs with really good patience, really good vision, one of those players that I think if you get him into an offense with a couple of complementary pieces behind him, probably primarily like a Zach Moss or a Devin Singletary, I think you can get a guy that can be really, really productive. I mean, former basketball player in high school, played point guard and shooting guard. And I think you can kind of see that with some of his runs. He kind of navigates through the holes like he's going to cross somebody over or just kind of look for that alley oop or something like that. And I think he's somebody that can catch passes out of the backfield. He had over 450 yards this past year, if I remember correctly. He can align out of the slot. So there's a role for him at the next level. And I think teams are going to like him a lot more than people kind of project today. And again, he didn't have an easy route to Arizona State. He wasn't highly recruited as a 3-star player. He went to Nebraska Kearney, ended up transferring to Mount St. Antonio College as a JUCO, and then was going to go to UCLA and then went to Arizona State. So I like his path to the draft. And I think, Rachaad White, as far as fitting, you might not have to spend a bunch of draft capital to get him. And I think he'd be a good fit. Sorry, I'm like hiccuping.
Yeah, you're right. I like his production too. I mean, 15 touchdowns, 1,000 yards. You were correct. 406 yards receiving, 43 receptions on 48 targets. So obviously, a part of that offense out there in Arizona State. So yeah, I think that's somebody that you could potentially target later draft that has a lot of upside. Obviously a big boy again, 6'2", 210. So running back there out of Arizona State. Maybe let's transition to Pop's question. I think Bill's Mafia looking at defense a little bit. So again, get your questions out there in the chat. Obviously, we don't always have to talk Mafia, but we do love Bill's Mafia. But if you have any questions about your team out there, feel free to throw them out there in the chat. I'm just curious about, I believe, the top 5 running backs. I'm trying to go back and find the comment. Yeah, here we go. So, can you rank the top 5 running backs in your opinion in this draft? And maybe to add on to his question, maybe which one potentially could be there when the Bills select in the second round, 57 over. I mean, not that they wouldn't potentially consider one of the first, but let's maybe assume they go corner in round 1. So maybe talk about linebackers here a little bit.
Yeah, so Nakobe Dean's my top linebacker. I think he's a top 15 player in this class. I just love the range. I love the aggressiveness, the downhill thumper that he is. Really good blitzer, maybe the best blitzer of any linebacker in this draft. Might be a little bit undersized. Not testing at the combine or his pro day is a little concerning. So maybe he's not as fast as he looks on tape. But I think if you put, some decent pieces around him, you get a guy that, can come in and be effective in the box. And that's what you need out of a linebacker. Next would be Devin Lloyd. Love the versatility with him. Got long arms, somebody that can rush the passer, can kind of drop to, curl the flats responsibility, can become that mid-hook defender at times, and does a pretty good job as far as scraping over the top, pretty good range. I like his skill set overall, but I just, I question with him, what's his overall fit in the NFL? Maybe I'm overthinking that, and maybe that's the thing with some teams, they'll overthink it. But where are you going to necessarily play him? Is he more of that will? Is he going to be, standing up off the edge on, specific downs and distances? It's going to be very interesting, but I know teams are going to covet that versatility as a first rounder all day. Next would be Chad Muma out of Wyoming. You really like what you see from him. And again, there's not a ton of all 22 on him. So you're watching a lot of, broadcast tape, you're watching stuff from the Senior Bowl, and it's just one of those things, but he tested really well at the combine. He's got that kind of the desired athletic ability at 6'3", 240. He'll play pretty high at times, but over the last 2 seasons, he's been a tackling machine. He's got, desired coverage ability with how clear he drops into his spots. So I think that holds a place in the hearts of, defensive coordinators and really teams around the league. So I think as far as a linebacker goes, he'll be somewhere maybe as that late second round pick that would make a lot of sense for them if they're trying to upgrade the position. Next would be Christian Harris out of Alabama. Kind of was this, highly touted recruit, somebody that I feel like has kind of slipped under the radar in a sense, as far as, how athletic he really is, but he's just kind of undersized. He looks like he has long arms and things like that. But then you watch him check it at the combine. He's only 6 foot, 226, which is fine in today's NFL. He ran well. He, again, athletic playmaker, but I think the biggest thing is he just doesn't work his hands enough. And if if you're struggling with any type of length and you're already not working with your hands, maybe you're struggling with just overall play strength, then that's a concern. And I think that's the issue. And then, he's just got to process faster. But when he just attacks downhill, he doesn't have to think and he's kind of free flowing. I think Christian Harris can be a playmaker at the next level, maybe best suited for more of that odd front, where he's got another linebacker next to him in the middle of a 3-4 defense or something like that. But with so many 4-2-5 defenses across the NFL, I mean, he might just be more so that Sam or Will or something like that for an NFL team. But I do like his skill set. And then lastly, it's such a close call between really these next 4 players, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, Damon Clark, Darian Beavers, Quay Walker, and Leo Chenel out of Wisconsin. I'm just going to go with Damon Clark. I don't necessarily know where his draft range is going to go. I know he just recently had surgery on his back, which is a bit of a concern. But you just look at a player that feels like he's destined to be plugged right in the middle of your defense. Maybe he falls a little bit under the radar like Derek Barnes did out of Purdue last year, but really good play strength when when disengaging blocks and attacking downhill. Teams love his leadership. I know that he has really good range, really good athletic ability to kind of go sideline to sideline. I think he can definitely read a little bit quicker. And he does this really weird, like false step as far as like he's in his stance and he like bunny hops. It's like the weirdest thing I've ever seen. He like takes 2 or 3 hop steps before making a decision to go left to right or attack downhill or even drop back into coverage. And it's like, you're already kind of putting yourself behind the 8 ball here. So he's an interesting study, but I would go with him because I think realistically he was an option for the Lions at 66. So if he's an option for the Lions at 66, he should certainly be an option for the Bills as well at the late second round.
Awesome. A lot of chat going on, so we're gonna hop around, guys. You talked about bunny hopping. We're gonna hop here. So we had a couple folks here that joined a little bit late. So we talked about running backs. Nate has a question here about Pierre Strong. Sorry if you joined a little. Thoughts on Pierre Strong? This particular gentleman, Mr. Nathan, is a fan of Pierre Strong. So maybe some thoughts on Pierre out of South Dakota State.
I wish I had a strong idea of what kind of player he is outside of maybe watching highlight tapes. I'm going to be honest. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't watched him. I can't sit here and lie to you and say I've watched him. I know he ran fast. He ran a 4.37, but there's no all 22 on him from what I've been able to kind of dig up. And I normally dig pretty deep and I haven't found any yet. So, he'll be somebody, once my draft guide's out there, I'll post clips of him on Twitter from stuff I can find on YouTube or something like that. But overall, I mean, maybe more of like that change of pace type of back just off of his speed alone. But I'd be lying if I sat here and said, yeah, he's got true RB1 potential. I wouldn't know. My apologies on that.
Well, now hey, it's homework. It's homework. We'll get back to you, Nate, with a Pierre Strong take. Just some straight production, ton of production in 21 season. 1,600 yards, 18 touchdowns. Not a ton out of the backfield, receptions on 34 targets for 150 yards. So not a ton in terms of pass catching. Not that means that he can't do it. But 7.1 yards per attempt. So obviously somebody maybe to take a peek and get an opinion out there. I love how you do those little player breakdowns where it's just kind of a quick snippet, 3-4 minutes, whatever. Throw those out, whether it's on cover1.net or out there on the tweeter. So Pierre Strong, we'll get one out today. Next one here, maybe similar situation, not sure. We had a question from Michael. Do you think Tariq Woolen is worth taking at 25, even though he is a little bit of a project?
I mean, I really paid attention to him during the Senior Bowl, during one of the last days of practice, really kind of tuned in on him. And he's one of those guys that I think has just such great length and athletic ability that you could maybe justify taking him at 25 for that reason. But realistically, I just think there's going to be some talented guys there, like a Kaiir Elam, like an Andrew Booth Jr., where it might be really tough to say, I'm going to take this super raw player, this project, and try to develop him. Because I'm going to be honest, like, you kind of done that the last year or so in Buffalo. Greg Russo wasn't necessarily a sure thing. There was some uncertainty with him, regardless of the length and the versatility. There was uncertainty with him because you didn't know what type of player he was because he didn't play for an entire year. Then you go and you take a Carlos Basham who's got a really weird body type, and he's one of those players that, didn't look like he carried his weight very well. And then you go out and get Spencer Brown, who's been a nice player, but he was also a project. Tommy Doyle, same type of deal. So I think with this case, I wouldn't take him at 25. If he was there in the second round, I would definitely roll the dice on him because, again, that length and athletic ability and explosiveness, it's hard to find. But I think when you go in the first round, you need a guy that can go in there day one and project and become something more than just a project from the beginning. Like, they're all projects, but some of these guys, you kind of expect them to go in there and do something. Woolen, I don't know if you necessarily expect him to come into the league and be this number 2 corner from the go. And especially with corners are tough to develop in the NFL anyways. So if I'm going to take a project where I already know it's going to be tough to project him at the next level, I'm going to do this in the second round or third round compared to anything else. But as far as like fit, I think he is a fit. It's just a matter of when and where you take him.
Yeah, and just for those listeners out there that maybe don't know, Tariq, he is the UTSA Roadrunners. He's a cornerback, 6'4", 205, so 6'4", tall, big. It's big for a cornerback. I know you just mentioned that from a length perspective, but 6'4", that is a tall drink of water, as they say at the cornerback position. Just sticking maybe with corners for a minute. Obviously the Bills interested in corners. There's obviously other teams that are picking around that same kind of position that are interested in the cornerback position. Let's say that whether it is Buffalo, whether it's Buffalo at 25, or I don't know, even the Bay, who I think could use some defensive help, at 27. If they don't get a cornerback there in round one, the questions kind of come up a little bit in different ways here in the chat. Who might be there? Who's a good cornerback to down at pick 55 to 60, maybe, end of the second round that could potentially come in and get a lot of reps, get a lot of snaps, with the first team defender one.
Well, I mean, obviously, we mentioned Woolen, but I'll kind of go with two different guys. I'll start with one of my favorites in this draft. That's Cam Taylor-Britt out of Nebraska. I mean, he is a really talented kid, really nice guy. Talking to him down at the Senior Bowl and interviewed him. I think even bits and pieces of that is on Twitter somewhere, but also maybe on YouTube for the Cover One site. But he's just one of those guys that's super smart, understands where his responsibilities are as far as in man zone coverage. He knows where to drop. He knows what to do, and he knows at least he knows the right answers. And in film, it shows. I mean, he trusts his athletic ability. He trusts his length. There's a lot of plays, whether it's against Michigan, whether it's against a variety of the teams, Ohio State, a variety of teams there in the Big Ten, where he comes out, he's kind of trailing in coverage, and then all of a sudden he just makes this jumping swat on the football and makes a great play and gets a pass deflection or an interception. And then he's very physical. I just love his physicality. I think, he moves pretty well for a player of his size. Long speed will get tested at times, but again, one of those guys that just kind of fits what the Bills might be looking for on the other side of Trey White. So if he was there, it wouldn't be a surprise. I do know, the Ravens were a team that had him in on a top 30 visit. So, take it for what that is. That's a fancy term for basically just a private visit, but that would be a great fit there as well. But if he's there and that's your guy, you go ahead and take him. Another one though, Mario Goodrich from Clemson. Really like this guy as a third round pick somewhere in this draft. He had multiple offers across the board, LSU, Florida, went to Clemson. Somebody that I think with his competitiveness at the catch point, it makes him somebody in man coverage and press man situations, somebody worth grabbing because he knows how to play through the football. He rips the ball out. He punches. He does things like that Charles Tillman used to do back in the day, in a sense. And like the last 7 games of his career at Clemson were probably the best of his career. And maybe it's a sign that the best football for him is now. It's moving forward because he had to wait in the wings. He had to sit behind Andrew Booth Jr. He had to sit behind a lot of talented players on this Clemson defense to finally get a shot. And during that 7-game span, 2 interceptions, 8 pass breakups, and a forced fumble, a consistent tackler, physical, like I mentioned, the lower body fluidity is going to get tested. The long speed is going to get tested. But again, if you're late second round, you don't think this guy's going to be there on your turn in the third round, I think you take him. Or again, and as maybe John says, there's a question or trade back. Maybe that's an option. I have no idea, but I like Mario Goodrich regardless of what his testing numbers are. And again, Cam Taylor-Britt, that's one of my guys.
All right, so as we continue the questions, feel free, fire them away in the chat. I'm just going to throw up some just comments because we were getting some comments of, Bill, Pops Mafia, great stuff on kind of the breakdown of the running backs. Had Chewy Baka, we were talking about hopping around like a bunny, so we got some bunny logos or bunny emojis. I love that. Nate was like, hey man, appreciate the honest review. When you didn't, have a lot of information there. So again, we'll get something out there for you, Nate, in a little good stuff. So we appreciate all the comments in the chat. Keep the questions coming in. I believe we had a question on Christian Watson, who's a wide receiver that I'm actually interested in from a Browns perspective at 44, since the Browns will have a first-round pick since we've acquired the services of Deshaun Watson. Glaring needs at wide receiver and edge rush and interior defensive line. So that's all in play, I think, at 44. But we could probably answer this question, in kind of both those angles. One, what's your take on Watson? Do you think he would be there towards the end of the second round? And then also, maybe going to the Brownies a little bit. Who do you think they should target at 44, given their needs, kind of what they've done in the offseason? He would be a good fit for the Browns at 44.
Well, starting with Christian Watson, really one of my favorite players in this draft, if I'm being completely honest. What I saw for him down at the Senior Bowl was really remarkable for a player of his size. You don't see guys that are 6'4", 208, 207 range be able to move the way he did and does. And then you see that fluidity. And I mean, to answer that question, I don't see him there at 57. Again, like I mentioned, a top 50 pick. I like him there at the Browns. I think that's a great spot for him. Down in the red zone, I think he could be somewhat of a menace for a team. I think he can really have an impact down there. But as far as like having that vertical ability just to push down the field and have that speed, he's got it. And I think he'll get better in the short and intermediate areas of the field with more time. But again, with the length, the kind of the athletic ability and the acrobatic grabs that we've seen from him already, I think he is somebody that can just get better with some NFL coaching. And he didn't get highly recruited out of high school because he basically threw all of the recruitments away the moment he committed to North Dakota State. So people were like, oh, well, he's under the radar. No, he wasn't under the radar. People went out to Tampa. They saw him. They wanted him. He didn't care. He wanted to play for the Bison, and he's a very committed guy. So he could very well carve out a 10 to 12-year career, be a part of an organization for quite some time, and just be kind of like the thorn in your team's side for quite some time. So I like the fit to the Browns. It's actually a really good point that you mentioned is maybe, coming in and playing there. I like that spot. He might be already off the board, though. I mean, if Detroit's there at 34, they might take him. If the Chiefs potentially maybe move back, they might consider him. They might even consider him in the first round. So I like Watson quite a bit. I disagree, Chewy. He does not remind me of Cooper Kupp. I'm sorry. I don't see that. I could be wrong. Other than that, though, George Pickens would be the guy for the Browns as well. 6'3", 195. I see a second-round player. It's hard to watch a lot of tape on him, so I have a lot of guys that got, 4 tape grades or five games that are up there as far as grades. He only got 3 because he's been injured. He had a torn ACL in 2021. He did make it back surprisingly quick, but I think he is somebody that has a really big catch radius with his long arms. He's very athletic for the position. I think he's got tremendous effort, which you can't teach. I mean, effort, it just comes with who you are as a person, and he has effort. He's making diving grabs left and right. I think he's actually a pretty decent route runner for like a player of his size. Now, there's times where I think he needs to lower his pad level. He needs to understand how to throttle down, but I think that will come with time. He's somebody in that second round that, again, the Browns, I love the fit there. I think he's potentially a top 60 player. So certainly the Bills can consider him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was already gone just because he's had a pretty good pre-draft process. And I know of 2 teams specifically that when I was talking to somebody last week who was going to a couple of pro days had mentioned, keep an eye on George Pickens as somebody in that early day 2 conversation.
Yeah, and I would love Watson to the Browns. I loved all your comments there. I think this combination of size and speed, to me, not definitely not physically imposing as a DK Metcalf, but somebody that's big and can get downfield vertically and get it quickly. I would love to pair next to a really nice route runner like Amari Cooper in that offense to give Deshaun Watson those types of weapons with that in the play action, the RPOs, all the things that Stefanski wants to do. So I love that to the Browns. And for maybe also kind of to stick with the Browns just for a moment before we get to some of the other questions out there. If they don't go wide receiver, what about defensive end? Somebody, second round, 44 pick, defensive end, edge rusher that you think could be there, that could be an impact player for them if they don't use David Clowney, or even if they do, somebody that, they can rotate in at that defensive end spot opposite of Myles Garrett.
That player will be somebody that definitely kind of slipped under the radar, and that's Drake Jackson out of USC. Earlier in the year, back in the fall, if the draft was then, some people might have said he's a first-round pick. He's kind of dropped a little bit just simply for the fact that, I think he needs to become a little bit more consistent as a tackler. He tries to kind of reach and grab and pull guys down. He doesn't really have a pass rush plan. Like, that's maybe the biggest area of concern is when you're a pass rusher, you got to come to the table prepared. You have to have something there that just makes you better. It makes everybody else around you better. And he just doesn't have that yet, but he's got really good length for the position. He uses his length to create separation. The athletic ability is there. And I think what helps him as far as a pass rusher is just his lower body flexibility. He has the desired bend for the position to kind of turn the corner, get after the quarterback, get in the backfield. I think he can change direction relatively well because of just his lateral quickness and some of his quick feet movement. So I think from an athletic standpoint, he is the player that maybe is kind of like that ball of clay. But as far as what you've seen over his career, 25 tackles for loss, 12 and a half sacks, had a sprained left ankle in 2019. He has come a long way from that player. And I think he could be in Cleveland. You bring up two great questions and two great positions that I see them going at some point in this draft, specifically early. And I think Pickens or Drake Jackson make a lot of sense for your Cleveland Browns.
All right. Hey, I would be on board with all of the above. Obviously free agency is still going on. They're still going to, all teams fill some holes with this kind of third-ish wave of free agency, in my opinion, at this point. And I think brings up a good question heading back over to Bills Mafia for a moment. Do we here at Cover One believe that Bean won't go a veteran, Nelson out of Philly, if maybe the best corner isn't on the board when our picks come up? And, maybe I'll aim this one from my opinion and then let you, Russell. I think anything can happen, honestly, Amy, from rosters. I think everybody is still kind of trying to see how these free agents kind of land here, in the opinion, again, the third tier or third wave of free agency. So I think, certain guys are going to have to set the market, although I believe Nelson's one of the better cornerbacks still out there from a free agent perspective. I think number 2 or 3-ish, in my opinion. I think that the Bills could potentially take a look there, although the cap, I think, is going to be a problem. I think that the Bills aren't necessarily going to, it depends on the contract, obviously, and I don't think the Bills, have a lot of flexibility from that, from a money standpoint. So I think the Bills certainly would prefer to go the rookie route if the player was there, in the draft at 25. But obviously we're a month away. I just realized that, a month away from the NFL draft. That's exciting. Less than a month away. That's exciting. Yeah. And hey, our show, maybe we should do a live, I don't know, we'll have to figure it out. Maybe we should do a live first round show. But I guess that's my take. I don't think that the Bills would be opposed to a veteran quarterback. Difficult potentially with the cap and the money to get somebody maybe like with the skill set of Nelson. But the longer every year sit out there, I think the more palatable some of these contracts are going to be too. So, Russell, I'm not sure if you had an opinion on that comment.
Not too much more to add. I pretty much agree with what you're saying. Obviously we'll see how the board shakes up. And I think that's kind of the deal with a lot of players out there. You look at Baker Mayfield kind of sitting there. I think the teams are going to wait to see who they can draft. And then the moment they can't figure it out, they're going to wait for either Baker to get cut or going to make a deal for him somehow, some way. But I think these teams right now, they kind of are starting to establish their draft boards. They don't want to move all of their picks around. and they don't want to lose their lottery tickets. They want to try to get the players that they have up on their board. And with that, they want to be, getting the guys that they need. So they'll look at the veterans then. And I saw this comment, and somebody asked earlier, what's going to get me fired up? And it's shit like this that gets me fired up, because you know what? I don't care what channel it is. This is a draft show. This is what we do. And if you haven't been here long enough, you'll know I'm not a Bills fan. Rich isn't a Bills fan. I like the team. I've adopted the team, but he's a Browns fan. I talk about the Lions all the time. And if you don't like it, then just go rate, review, and subscribe to the audio show so you can listen to me not talk about the Bills, because I don't give a damn. Okay? Move forward.
Woo! Spin some hot lava fire there to Trace Morris. But yeah, Trace Morris. Cover one. Certainly a Buffalo Bills network, and we love Bills Mafia as a Browns fan, and Detroit fan. I think the whole Midwest connection, the Rust Belt, everything you have going on, I love out of when any of our teams are doing well, because we've all had our share of heartbreak. But yeah, certainly Cover One. Honestly, we're trying to branch out a little bit here at Cover One. We're trying to do, try to get into some more shows. Russell does a fantastic job with the overall NFL draft, not simply from a Bills perspective. Certainly we love questions. Certainly we love to incorporate those in the show and get all the chat going on around Bills Mafia, because, man, I love putting people through tables like the next guy. Me and Russell are both, wrestling fans too, so we love that aspect of it. But we're certainly on other teams. So if you have questions about your team, you're not a part of Bills Mafia, or maybe you're just an honorary member like myself, feel free to continue to put those in the chat. But, Trace, love the comment. I love that you brought some hot lava out of Russell, with spitting some fire on that response to that particular comment.
I had to. I'm sorry. I don't normally get upset, but I had to.
I love it. Ooh, fire.
Fire.
I love it. Wait, you guys are Bills fans? Fire. Oh, and yeah, we got definitely going to drink a little bit. So, one question I had here, and I'll keep scrolling back if we have any other questions that we haven't covered yet. And if you put a question out there earlier in the chat and maybe we missed it, you put it back in there, because we're trying to cover as many as we can today. One thing that I do want to ask about that Bills Mafia will be interested in, even though it's not about Bills Mafia, is the New York Football Jets. They have draft capital. They're sitting at picks 4, 10, 35, 38. So that, in my opinion, that's a ton of capital. What if you were the GM, and we played this role a little bit last week with our mock draft, and if I can probably bring up, we had, I think, let's see, Anthony went Kayvon Thibodeau at 4 for the Jets. Let's see here, and then Sauce Gardner went 10. I don't remember whose pick that was. That might have been actually. So Sauce Gardner went 10 to the Jets. If you're the Jets and you're the Jets GM with all that draft capital, what are you doing with that team right now?
Well, I think when you look at this team, I think the Jets are kind of still trending in what I had on that mock draft after the Super Bowl. I think Sauce Gardner is more the toxic Lake Erie water has hurt the Lions, Browns, and Bills fans for decades. No lie there. That is 100% fact.
I mean, it's slightly cleaner than it was 50 years ago, but yeah.
I used to swim in it when I was a kid. So, I mean, I don't know. That's where I learned how to swim. My dad threw me in the lake and said, figure it out. And I was like, okay. But yeah, no. So, with the Jets, they're interesting. I mean, I don't think much has changed since how I felt after the Super Bowl. I think that they're still in a position to get Sauce Gardner. I don't think they're going to be able to do it at 10. I really think that might be their guy at 4. And I just kind of base it off of where some of his draft position prop bets are, as far as in DraftKings and thing like that. But also I do know that, they've kind of been linked to him quite a bit during this process. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was their guy at 4, and they're hoping for maybe some type of fall of not so much a Kayvon Thibodeau, but more so maybe a Trayvon Walker, maybe a Jermaine Johnson, maybe a George Karlaftis at 10. And I really think Jermaine Johnson. I think those are the two guys at 4 and 10. Sauce at 4, Johnson at 10. Those would be home run picks for the Jets, and something that rebuilds that defense. And then when you get to those second round picks, you're looking at, Trey McBride out of Colorado State. You're looking at George Pickens, Christian Watson. You're looking at some Senior Bowl guys that you got to work with. And I think that's what the Jets will more than likely do. But don't be surprised if they're one of those teams that maybe try to package something and move up. And I don't know if that'll be up to pick 32. I don't know if that's going to be something as far as up to the Bills pick. I don't think they're going to trade within the division, but you never know. Maybe it's Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay could move back, get some draft capital, rebuild their offensive line, put some stuff on the defense. So the Jets have options, and I think that's the key is the Jets can do a lot of different things with what they need to do. So I would go that route with those players. I mean, there's so many different scenarios of how it could play out, but I like defense in the first round for sure.
Yeah, Jessica was right on board with you there, and I like her perspective. If you're going to play in the East right now with the wide receivers and the weapons that the Bills have, Josh Allen, Hill, although I still think that's a weird fit with Tua at quarterback, but that doesn't mean they can't get a different quarterback at some point there. Miami with the receiving weapons now with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, who I'm a huge Jalen Waddle fan. Fantasy football's perspective, again, for everybody that's out there that maybe, is used to just only build on Cover One Network. We do a fantasy football show over the summer as well with myself, Greg Thompson, Anthony Prohaska. And man, do I love Jalen Waddle, especially now with Tyreek Hill on that team, even with Tua throwing the football. So regress a little bit, but check that out over the summer. We're going to bring that back here as we head into the fantasy football season. But I think when you obviously, we're on board with that, trying to get Sauce Gardner there with one of the first two picks. And, the Mafia perspective, they love to bag on the Jets, and they just have a lot of capital. So I think the Jets probably will messing it up somehow because it's the Jets, Jets, but a lot of capital there. All right, let's see. Again, if you have any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I have.
There's been a lot of them.
Myself, and I think
I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah, I keep up too, which is great. What round positions are? Somebody was talking about, and I'm trying to find the question at the moment. Like, who do you think is going to make the trade? Who is what is the pick, or what's going to be the team in your opinion that makes that first trade during the draft? And I know obviously trade call to project. It's more fun than anything to kind of think about who might make a trade. And I actually had that question down for you as I was kind of doing some pre-work for the show here today. Maybe what is the most likely pick to get traded, one or even round two? Is it one of the Eagles picks? Is it a Jets pick? I would think not probably from a Jets. You need everybody that can get up that high. But who do you think? Who do you think maybe makes a move, either to move up into, or what picks getting moved?
Well, this is an interesting one. I was kind of asked this question on the radio earlier today. I want to say it was on ESPN Rochester on the Fan, or maybe not ESPN Rochester, but the Fan in Rochester, whatever it is, out there with Mike Danger and Gene and stuff like that. But I think the team that I think of the most is the Giants at 7. Not so much because, they don't want to take good football players or anything like that, but they are kind of pressed against the cap, and they're kind of pressed at the wrong time because you got to get these rookies under contract and all that stuff. They've only got about $1 million to spend or so, maybe $2 million. And I have, seen some stuff as far as like they have looked into moving that 7th pick, and maybe it's for a team like, the Minnesota Vikings, who knows what that new regime is going to want to do. Maybe they want to move up from 12 to 7 to maybe land a Sauce Gardner if he's there. But I think they're the team worth keeping tabs on, but it's hard to say because I know that I know they like Charles Cross. I know they like Kayvon Thibodeau. There's a chance that they could get both of those players at 5 and 7. So that would make a lot of sense, but the trades are hard to predict. I mean, I could see Detroit moving back. They've already kind of talked about it this week down at that winter meeting or whatever it is that they do. And I could see that being the thing. I could see that happening, but at the same time, I don't see it happening. I'm kind of beating around the bush on the question. Maybe Houston at 13, just simply because they take a player at 3 and maybe New Orleans calls and says, hey, you'll move back to 18, but we're going to give you even more draft capital. So there's so many scenarios. It's hard for me to say, but I would say those would be, the kind of the most common ones as far as I could wrap my head around. And then just from a quarterback perspective, Atlanta trying to get in front of Carolina at 6, trying to beat a division rival, trying to get that quarterback. Maybe it's Kenny Pickett. Maybe it's Malik Willis. Who knows? So I would keep tabs on that.
All right. Well, hey, just shout in. It's okay that you're late, man. We appreciate you joining. So just shout out to Nathan. Thanks for hopping on late with us tonight. Stick around. We're going to wrap it up here in a moment, but Air Raid will be on at 9 o'clock on the Cover One Network. So, if you are Bills Mafia and you enjoy Buffalo Bills football, make sure you stick around at 9 o'clock for them. I do like this question because we haven't talked a ton about safeties. I mean, Hamilton we've discussed. He slid in our mock draft a ton. It's interesting. But I want to put this question up here from Tim. Any safeties worth taking a swing on rounds, or is it, simply a more top heavy draft from a safety perspective? Give the safety position a little love today on the Cover One NFL Draft Show.
No doubt. Very familiar with the position. Talked about it earlier this week over at Woodward Sports, which is kind of my other gig as well. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, you can go to woodwardsports.com. You can go to YouTube and type in Woodward Sports, and you can see all kind of the live shows, the videos. You can also find the draft show with Bischoff and Brown, myself, and Scott Bischoff, who's my co-host, and we do NFL draft stuff for them as well. And if you just search the draft show with Bischoff and Brown, with Woodward Sports, however you want to do it, you should find it on Spotify, Spreaker, stuff like that. And we talk really deep into safeties for like 45 minutes. So there's a lot of good stuff there. But to answer the question, in the mid rounds, I mean, yes, it's a little top heavy. I guess you kind of gotta decipher as far as what's considered top heavy, because yes, we could see Daxton Hill in the top 25 of this draft. We could see Jaquan Brisker as a late first rounder somewhere, maybe a Lewis Seen, maybe. But other than that, I mean, later rounds, I like Jalen Petrie quite a bit out of Baylor. I think he's more of that pro-ready type of guy that could play down in the box, played a variety of roles down at Baylor, played that star position. He moves really well downhill, very effective blitzer. I think you play him closer to the line of scrimmage and you get a guy that can make some really good plays, makes tackles. He's hesitant as far as what he can do in zone coverage. He lets a lot of routes underneath him and things like that. But again, Petrie, maybe in that late second, early third round would be a really good fit for a team. Outside of that, I'm going to go with just one of my favorite players back there, and that's Kirby Joseph out of Illinois. Really great range for the position, plays that traditional free safety, single high, cover one type of player that just gets after it. Explosive athlete, great length for the position, had 5 interceptions this past year, which was tied for most in the country. And I love his skill set. He moves really well in space, takes the proper angles to prevent, ball carriers from juking him out of his shoes. He can definitely get better as far as just overall recognition, like at the mesh point and things like that, in the backfield and stuff like that. I mean, I think there's times where he kind of bites on the things in the backfield from play action and zone reads and stuff like that. So if he can read that and diagnose it a little bit quicker, I think he can become that much better of a player. But third rounder, late third round, maybe early fourth round type of player. He might go even sooner just because the ball skills are there in the range. So that the long answer to that is yes, I like the safety class. Running the numbers on it, I ran it the other day on Twitter because I had said it was a relatively deep draft, and I will have to pull this up so you can start looking for another question. I am trying to remember what the numbers were. I want to say there was 20 on average over the last 5 years, 20 safeties selected in the draft. Let me pull this up. Give me 20 seconds.
Yeah, no problem. Time with 20 seconds again. If you have any other questions for us as we look to kind of come down the home stretch on NFL Draft Weekly, please get them in. We got a couple out there that maybe we can get to at the end of the show here. There's a couple I kind of like. We've talked about Brees a little bit, so G-Long video guy. I'm gonna try to get Russell's opinion on Najee Harris as far as the comp goes between Brees after he gets done with this particular conversation on safeties. And then also we had another question regarding cornerback, who we think the Bills might take at 25. But Russell, continue your thought on the safety position.
Yeah, I think I might have said 20.7, or maybe I did say this, but I said on average 20.4
It's a 20.
per. Yeah. So over the last 5 years, we've seen a total of 102 safeties selected, an average of 20.4 per draft. I only have 8 graded. That's without Nick Cross, who have only watched 1 game on. Damari Mathis, only 1 game on. So I could technically get up to 2, but I'm not gonna pain myself to try to keep writing draft profiles all between now and the draft. I might do them kind of on like spare time and just drop them when they get selected or something like that. But again, I got 8 guys graded in the top 5 rounds of this draft. So I like this group. But again, expect a lot of safeties to get drafted. Expect a lot of running backs to get drafted, good, bad, or ugly. It doesn't matter. They're going to get drafted. So that's just kind of what happens.
All right. So let's do 2 more questions as we near the hour mark here of the show. Again, appreciate all the chat out there. Loving you guys tonight in the chat, especially, hey, let's more comments to get Russell fired up too. I think that was awesome. So if you have any comments to try to get Russell fired up, I think that segment at some point in the future. But the one, quickly, Breece Hall, we talked about the running backs earlier. Does he compare it all to Najee Harris? I personally don't see that, but does he compare it all to Najee? Do you see any similarities there?
I do not. I really don't. I don't know if there really is a comparison to Najee in this draft. I mean, you would want to think it's Brian Robinson just from the overall size at 6'2", 225, but he's not really there yet. But Brian Robinson, you're welcome, Tim. But Brian Robinson, it's not even like scouting the helmet or anything like that. It's just, just from a size perspective, I don't think there really is a Najee Harris type of back. I mean, if I had to maybe roll the dice, I can't even say Kenneth Walker, because I think of Kareem Hunt when I see Kenneth Walker. So I don't see one in this draft. It's a good question. I don't see it.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, G-Long video guy. And then one more before we get on here. We talked a ton about cornerbacks. We talked a ton about the Bills at 25. But I like this question: which cornerback do you think, if we were to mock a cornerback to the Bills at 25? And for Nick G, if you weren't here last week for a mock, again, Anthony did have Trent McDuffie going to the Bills at 25 as we did a live mock draft. It was a ton of. I think maybe we'll do another one before the draft actually happens here a month from now, because we had a great time. But what do you think? He mentioned that Freeland has Zion as the pick. I actually looked at her mock draft earlier today and saw that. I'm actually literally looking at a mock draft right now by Josh Edwards from Sports, who actually has Trent McDuffie to the Bills at 25. For me, and obviously Russell, more interested in your opinion than mine as kind of the more of the draft expert here. But I think somebody like McDuffie or maybe Booth is somebody that I could see going to the Bills at 25 at the cornerback position. I think Sauce Gardner's, unless they trade up, I think that's certainly not happening. And even Booth, I think, is going to have to fall a little bit. But I would see one of those guys at 25 if they were on the board. I think the Bills would be really interested in one of those players. But what are your thoughts there?
They could certainly be interested in McDuffie, just simply because of his overall athletic ability, his length, his ability to run in the hip pocket of receivers is really impressive. He's got really good range as far as that goes. I mean, you just don't see guys able to go from one point of the field all the way across and get on a crosser and make a great play on the football. I just don't know if he's going to be there. I think of the Eagles as a potential landing spot for him with 3 first-rounders there. Next, Andrew Booth. I'm hesitant there just because the tape has fallen off a little bit from 2021 to 2020, but also the injuries have piled up between the combine and just through this entire pre-draft process. I mean, it's very alarming to me to see a guy getting dinged up without even going through contact or anything like that. Other than that, I mean, I would have to say kind of maybe the outside chance would be maybe Roger McCreary out of Auburn. Just simply because of how fluid his lower body is. I think he's somebody that you can play outside, inside. I love guys that can change direction at the snap of a finger, and that's what he does. I mean, he enters the NFL with 42 games played as a 3-year starter, super competitive cornerback. I think kind of what you see is what you get. Some NFL coaching might upgrade him a little bit. Very coachable kid, and I think that's something the Bills want. That's something they need. So I think he would be kind of that fit at 25. And then as far as Zion Johnson being that pick, I'm not opposed to that idea. I think that's a really safe pick. And the chat was bumping last night. Upgrade the offensive line and watch what Devin Singletary can do. That's cool. I'm not buying that, but also I would buy the fact that if you got Zion Johnson, he might get better. But most importantly, you're getting one of the most consistent offensive linemen in the draft, hands down. I mean, super stout run blocker, thick frame, super strong, can play multiple positions. He's played left tackle, both guards, played center. I think he can do anything you ask him to do, and he's a really coachable kid, former wrestler, or I'm sorry, he played on the golf team, excuse me. So he's somebody that understands how to win with leverage, and he's a smart kid. I think the Bills would be really interested in him. I don't think he'll be there.
We're going to do rapid fire too. You got 20 seconds. Yeah, for sure. You got two. We got two more questions. We're going to do 20 seconds each, rapid fire. We got your buddy Ron. I love Ron Beck. Anybody that's a sleeper that maybe is going to drop. Sleepers that could go day 3, and then we can talk about them, next week in more depth. So maybe do a little sprinkle, a little teaser.
Yeah, well, one of the sleepers, Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati, good length for the position, might trail at times, but he's very competitive through the catch point. Another one would be, I'll go with Calvin Austin out of Memphis, somebody that's just got that speed, can do a variety of things, play all over, kind of reminds me of a Tariq Cohen. And then lastly, Luke Goedeke out of Central Michigan. From a technique standpoint, some of the most cleaner technique for an offensive tackle, just really plays in kind of the box of his body that is, and he understands how to stay square. Very good technician, my type of player. I like him better than Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan, who's gotten some first-round buzz. Thank God that kind of died off because he's not ready. But Luke Goedeke, his tape against Missouri, some of the better offensive line tape in this draft if you watch that game against Missouri.
All right, and last one, Jessica. Again, I think fun. I like these are fun questions to me. I always like transition groups going to go more than another one. So, in your opinion, more wide receivers or more corners go in?
I'm gonna go wide receiver with this one. I think the injury concerns to Derek Stingley are legit. It might push him down the draft boards. I would definitely circle the New England Patriots there at 21. I love that fit. I don't know if he makes it that far, especially with the Eagles with 3 picks and the Steelers there, but you never know. Also, Roger McCreary's kind of a borderline first rounder. Same with Kaiir Elam. The same with Andrew Booth. Kind of your sure things is Sauce, maybe Trent McDuffie, and maybe Derek Stingley. So you got 3 there. I've got 5 first-round grades on the wide receivers, and I think Treylon Burks could potentially sneak in there, and there's a chance that Christian Watson could sneak in there. So you just, from the mathematical standpoint, I got more wide receivers that could go in the first round than corners. So I would go with that.
All right. Well, no, Christian Watson's going to the Browns at 44, so no Russell. but other excellent analysis as always. Again, appreciate all the chat. I'm giving the chat a little clap here, a little round of applause. I will continue to have some libations in your honor this evening here as we head into the weekend, Friday and Saturday, Sunday here. And again, another love with you, Russell, talking some draft. We didn't even have a plan tonight. We're like, hey, let's just answer some questions. And hey, we got great interaction from everybody out there. Love you guys. Please, as people have said, smash that like button. Subscribe to Cover One. Check out Russ and all the different media things he has going on in his world. We appreciate all the support and, again, all of your interaction out there. So, Russell, any parting comments for our friends this evening?
No, great dialogue tonight. Great questions. Always enjoy it. If you ever want to just ask me random questions, find me on Twitter at RussNFLDraft. If you shoot me a DM, it might take me a couple days to see it because they don't necessarily pop through. I got to accept it first. So just smash the follow button on Twitter and we'll have a good time and we'll get all the way through the draft over the next 30 days. So appreciate the support.
Yeah. So, and, upcoming episodes, we got a couple weeks left, 3-4 weeks left, 4 weeks, or at least 3 of our shows before the draft. And then we're going to have to talk about if we're going to do a live one on Thursday night. So we'll definitely get into some content, second, third round, another mock draft, maybe another live mock draft. So as Russ mentioned, follow us on Twitter at Burn River Sports, at Russ NFL Draft. Subscribe to Cover One. Check everything out. Guys, appreciate you. We are out of here. See you next week. NFL Talk, this one, NFL Draft Weekly. See ya.